Hello my dears, I feel like I spent the entirety of my theater pedagogy video talking about how I'm making a video on why method acting is an entire disaster, and here we are. It's time to get angry. I'm gonna do a recap by basically just showing you some pieces of that video to save myself time, and then we're gonna talk more about the legacy of method acting and what we should be doing instead. But first, hi there, hello, my name is Sydney, my pronouns are they, them. I am an autistic, disabled, trans, queer, non-binary actor, composer, media analyst, and educator. I'm doing a thesis about reforming education, particularly theater education, and it's culminating in the world's first all-neurodivergent cast and crew production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, and you can learn about that at the links in my description. Great, all right, let's talk about method acting. Take it away, former Sydney. Stanislavski. This is a man that I've always hated and talked bad about, and I'm now realizing that I actually really hate Strasberg, and that every one of my teachers has smushed Stanislavski and Strasberg's teaching together and called it Stanislavski, and that Stanny Boy was pretty alright, and he seemed like a decent human, if not in fact a genuinely great one. I didn't know him personally, so I can't tell you, but he was born in 1863 in Imperial Russia. He started changing the face of theater forever with his method in 1909, and then in 1917 there was the whole revolution thing, and Imperial Russia rapidly became the USSR. He continued changing theater forever until he died in 1938. He was given a lot of medals by the Soviet government over the years, but what I like most about Stan is that he was constantly changing his methods and learning through trial and error, and he recorded all of this. For example, the whole use trauma from your past to inform your character thing was something that he did genuinely try out for a few years because it was the quickest and easiest way to teach new actors how to act. But he then realized that the ones who were using this method of emotional memory the most were also the ones who were really struggling with mental health issues the most and also had objectively worse acting, so he scrapped his idea pretty quickly. He also started out mostly with psychological work, but then realized that physicality is just as important and that many characters are better built from the outside in rather than the other way around, and so he kept things as equal parts external and internal. His ideas came from a desire for hyper-realism because he felt like directors had too much hold on the actors and that the actors felt stiff and unnatural, so he wanted to create tools for the actor to supply direction to themselves by planning, analyzing, and calculating the character beforehand. He came up with the idea of the magic if in figuring out what to do. For example, if I were a penguin, I would want to do this and I would move like this. Bam, I have an objective and a physicality for my character. Why is that character a penguin? I don't know, that's what my brain just came up with. Also, speaking of objectives, he had this idea of a character's objective and their super objective. The super objective is the one thing that the character wants through the whole play. And then the objective is the smaller thing within each scene or beat that a character wants that leads to the overall super objective. This is how you make sure that you're acting in each scene with intention. The character always wants something and is always moving towards something, and it's more engaging and real for the audience and the actor. I cannot express how many times a professor has given me a text and told me to break it up into individual beats and name the individual objectives and then the overall super objective of the piece, and it's always infuriated me because nobody, character or not, exists with one overall thing that they want, because human nature is way more complicated than that, and I've never been able to narrow down a character's desires into a one-word thing. But now that I've read a lot of his work through an educational lens, I'm realizing that he meant this as a tool to help actors newer to acting to really study the text, to learn to really pay attention to the character on the page, and to break it down into little manageable bites that all have a consistent character throughout so that everything feels pretty cohesive and so that you can easily replicate that every time that you perform that scene. And I always got the vibe of, if this doesn't work for you, you're a bad actor and you can't create character or whatever, and that's usually how it's taught. But it's really just another thing in the actor's toolkit that you're welcome to throw out the window if you so desire. Even Stanislavski knew that it wasn't sacred and that we shouldn't act like it is, especially because, again, most of what he created was meant to be for new actors to get them started thinking through all these things and practicing and developing their skills to a point where all of this just becomes innate and they don't have to think these things through. And he purposefully made it very grounded in context clues and such so that it was easy for anybody to do regardless of skill level, because he was also frustrated with the education he'd gotten and thought that it was very abstract and hard to understand. So thank you for your service, Stanislavski. I'm sorry for dragging your name through the mud for the last 3 years. You were a cool guy, you did your very best, and then everybody took that and promptly destroyed it. Next is Meisner, Adler, Strasberg, Klerman, and the bastardization of Stanislavski, which I'm gonna try not to talk too much about because I need to save this energy for my method video in a few weeks that I'm definitely not filming today. But boy, am I riled up about it. So all four of these people started being active in the 1940s-ish when they were all part of the group theater, later known as the Actors Studio in New York City, and they all had their own ideas and a lot of infighting because of those ideas. So let's begin with Stanford Meisner. His work is based on Stanislavski, and he's known for the idea that acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. He believed that actors' focus should be on other actors in the scene, and that this focus can be learned through exercises focused on repetition, improvisation, and behavioral attention. He wanted his actors to get out of their heads, to stop thinking, to get rid of their habitual behaviors, and just react and follow their impulses. He literally told his actors not to do anything until somebody else made them do it. Meisner told actors to develop the thoughts and feelings of their characters through physical action, imagination, and the given text. And it's not a mental game, it's not a backstory or character analysis, it's literally just a focus on the circumstance and on the other actors around you. He was really anti-dredge up your past trauma to make good art. He did say that whatever is necessary for an actor to enter a scene emotionally alive, whether imagined or personal, is valid, but it does need to be something that you can snap out of pretty easily after the first moment in order to focus all your attention on the actors around you, in order to organically respond to them. And I will say that when you have a scene partner who's given you absolutely nothing, the Meisner technique is not super effective at creating interesting or engaging performance. It works best with other Meisner actors, but it's still a huge part of acting education today, so I appreciate it and I'm not mad about it. Meisner's friend, Stella Adler, taught with Lee Strasberg for a bit, and everybody was friends until she went to study with Stanislavski for a while, realized Strasberg was doing Stanislavski horribly wrong, got in a big fight with him, and split off to create her own acting studio in 1949. Meisner was on her side in this fight, and we'll learn who Strasberg is in a second. He's the worst. So she focused more on the physical aspects of Stanislavski and believed that 50% of acting is external characterization, ways of walking, voice, face, etc., and 50% is imagination, emotion, action, will, etc. Much like Meisner, she wanted her actors to focus on the gold hidden in the circumstances of the given text. She also thought that extensive research was necessary in order to play a role authentically, though she also firmly believed that any backstories created should be based on imagination rather than on personal memory, and she wanted performance to be big, expressive, and carefully crafted. She was very known for regularly saying, "Don't be boring, and in your choices lies your talent." She's also cited as saying, "It will take the theater decades to recover from the damage that Lee Strasberg inflicted on American actors." So that's a great segue into our next dude, Lee Strasberg, the father of method acting. He thought that it was important that his actors directly connect the emotions of their characters to those that they had felt in the past, and do whatever it takes, no matter what, to make that possible, which is 99% of the time either dredging up old trauma or creating new trauma for no reason. He also required his students to create full character backstories for their characters to create an inner life. Do I think that's an entire waste of time because it means you're not actually focusing on the text that's given to you? Absolutely I do. Also, emotional memory, as we talked about earlier, is a thing that Stanislavski almost immediately threw out the window when he saw the effect it had on his students' well-being and on their acting skills. Strasberg actually was lucky enough to have a chance to meet Stanislavski and see some of his work, and he very much said lots of snarky things about how Strasberg could do it way better and Stanislavski had no idea what he was doing, so that's good. Also, Stanislavski openly condemned the man's practices at least twice, which is also good. He used his method to be creepy to people, particularly to Marilyn Monroe, but also many other people, and I don't like it. This, of course, made me do a quick cursory research into the psychological effects of method acting, which what I learned is that there are multiple studies directly linking it to fatigue, fear, anxiety, shame, irritability, sleep deprivation, personality changes, psychotic disorders, emotional fatigue, dissociative issues, and psychosis. When practiced correctly under professional supervision, it can be effective and safe. And like for people who are really good at compartmentalization, it's not horrible terrible, but it's pretty horrible terrible. So the fact that acting teachers around the world teach Strasberg to smush with Stanislavski and preach it as pure Stanislavski and be like, oh, every actor does this and this is super safe and this is fine, is a serious issue. And I will yell about this later in this video a little bit and a whole ton of my other video. Also, to people who go to Mount Holyoke College, I will be speaking to the theater department about this once I get all my sources in order, so don't worry. That's gonna happen. Thank you, former Sydney. If you want to watch that video, you can check it out in the card above. I go into literally every single theater practitioner I've ever heard of to cure my imposter syndrome of not knowing who they are and therefore convincing myself that I'm bad at acting. And then I talk about the disaster that is our arts education system. Great time, highly recommend. But now that we know the characters of our story, and we also know that my upstairs neighbor is an elephant, and the origins of Strasberg's method, let's talk about what that looks like today. I think that we've all seen these articles that are like 10 actors who almost died because of intense method acting, or 30 method acting moments that went too far. And we've all heard stories of that time that Daniel Day-Lewis got pneumonia on set because he refused to wear a real coat because it wasn't period. Or when Leo DiCaprio ate raw bison for a role despite being a vegetarian his whole life. Or when Dustin Hoffman just straight up abused Meryl Streep. Or when Jamie Foxx glued his eyes shut to play a blind musician. And of course, Jared Leto sending dead animals to his cast members in Suicide Squad, etc., etc. And that's why I was honestly surprised to learn that Strasberg's initial method did not have actors going that far. He just wanted them to understand the experiences of the characters and then input their own personal experiences, read that, trauma, into their character, which made me think, okay, so then where the heck did modern method acting come from and why is it so extreme? Why do people do it in the first place? And after a lot of research, I think the overall answer is toxic masculinity. Maybe, but let's start by talking about the issues with method acting other than it makes you an objectively worse actor because you have no control over how you respond to traumatic memories in any given moment and it takes you out of the action on stage, because there's that too. The first reason that method acting makes no sense to me is that it is rarely somebody doing something fun or joyful to prepare for a role. It's always some form of like self-torture that is wildly unnecessary to play a character, or alternatively, just an excuse to be stupid, creepy, and or a terrible human being. And for what it's worth, I do think that learning a new skill or doing some research to understand a character and base it in reality is both good and important on some level. However, that is not the same thing as, say, I don't know, taking acid to see what your character felt like when he was high. Shia LaBeouf, or verbally abusing your castmates to stay in character when the cameras aren't rolling. But where does this need to go way over the top and torture yourself for a role even come from? Again, toxic masculinity, but more specifically, legacy. You see, people typically see acting as an easy job that anybody can do rather than a real craft that needs to be learned and studied. And by torturing themselves for a role, actors are making the amount of work they put into a role very clear to those who are watching, as if to prove that they are real actors doing a real craft. And because these actors put in all of this sacrifice for the role, people watching it will automatically assume it's something really, really great. And it's why so many of the actors that win Oscars subscribe to the method. It's a way to get people to talk about you, a way to get people to go, oh, they're so good at their job because they're so dedicated to it, and mythologize their legacy forever. Most of the actor names that I know are often because of their method shenanigans. Have I heard about those stories and thought to myself, what the heck is wrong with those people? You don't need to do that in order to act properly. This is really pointless. Absolutely. But I still know their names. And we've seen this before. We've talked about this in my Tortured Artist video a while back. We like when our art has some sort of salacious story and mythologized person behind it because it makes the art feel more legitimate to us. And inevitably, a byproduct of this is the wide acceptance of turning your inner demons into something for everybody else and valuing good art at the sake of the artist's well-being. But again, as we've talked about before, the tortured artist trope is a myth. You don't make better art when you're in mental and physical turmoil. You make more haphazard, panicked, and less thought through art. And you burn out much faster than artists with a healthy work-life balance, because when it comes down to it, acting is a job. It's play, of course. It's a fun job, but it is a job. And much like any other job, you do better work when your mental health is okay, when your physical health is okay, and when you're able to set boundaries between work and the rest of your life. Not only is that your best acting, but it also gives you a safe basis to go back to and to center yourself, making it easier to try new things and experiment and step further out of your comfort zone, letting you create more and better art. Method acting, when looked at through this lens, is just impractical. Like when you're on stage, you're not fully present to do your best acting and economize your energy. Also from a technical lens, taking a million years creating the backstory and biography of your character really takes time away from learning the life of your character through the given text and actually using the source material that you're given. And for stage actors who do 8 shows a week for a few months, method acting is a great way to dissociate your entire run and have your brain deleted the second the show closes. That's why most of the method actors we hear about are in the movies rather than on stage. I'm not saying that stage actors are better actors than film actors, but I am saying that they usually have a better work-life balance because the performance is more regular and consistent rather than short filming chunks over the span of a few weeks and then a few weeks off. But that's also not the only reason that film actors tend to lean towards method. Often things are filmed one-on-one and you have to pretend that your scene partner is there. And often the same take will happen 100 times in a row. You don't get that full story arc to play out in one go like actors do on stage, making actors grasp at whatever immediate strong emotion they can quickly grab or find to keep themselves in the moment throughout the filming process. That, however, does not explain why most of the famous actors who subscribe to the method are white men, because one would assume if it were more useful for film acting, it would be equally used between all kinds of actors. And interestingly, a lot of famous women and BIPOC actors have noticed this as well. It is very commonly said when actors who are not white men are asked how they feel about method acting, they say, we wouldn't be able to get away with it. There's a certain level of privilege in the acting world for white men. This should not be surprising. And even Strasberg was known for working very closely with his male students in directing things, keeping secrets about what they were going to do in the scene from the leading lady, and surprising her with it while the camera was rolling or while they were on stage to get a more genuine reaction. Also, as I mentioned before, Strasberg was the personal acting teacher for Marilyn Monroe, and the whole everything, all of it was very gross and creepy and icky, and I don't like it, but we're not talking about that today. It's also often so hard for minority people to land roles that they know that if they don't act a certain way when cameras aren't rolling, they will get blacklisted and they will never book a role again. Meanwhile, Jared Leto can send people dead animals and call it method acting, and everybody's like, great, sounds good, and hires him for the next thing, because our industry is a disaster. But anyway, in case you cannot tell by now, method acting also causes serious mental health issues. Forcing yourself to live as a character nonstop, especially when that character is evil, has been linked to loss of a sense of self, dissociative disorders, and psychoses. And on a lesser level, emotional fatigue, burnout, disrupted sleep, increased anxiety, headaches, stomach issues, all those can also happen. And the thing about our brains is that they have a very hard time distinguishing between what is real and what is not real. That's why we sometimes get overwhelmed by plots in movies, why sometimes dreams freak us out, and why actors really need to teach themselves how to compartmentalize their characters so that they can distinguish the real world and the fake one. Now, when I was in second year here at Mount Holyoke, I was in a play called Mackinac. It's about a woman who gets shoved through the machine of life. She ends up marrying a terrible guy because she doesn't have much choice, has this kid, ends up murdering him, and gets sent to the electric chair. I played that woman. And the thing was, this was during the semester we were on campus, but we were doing Zoom school, which meant that the show was filmed from our dorm rooms. And having my performance space, using my bed as the hospital bed, and then after filming was done, closing my laptop, moving my camera, and trying to fall asleep in that bed really messed with me. It felt like my comfy and safe space, my little dorm room, was suddenly alien and overwhelming and scary, and I no longer felt safe there, which meant that I had nowhere to ground myself. And since the show was filmed, I can look back and tell you my performance is not something I'm majorly proud of. Like, it was fine. It was fine, but I know that I can do way better when I have the ability to keep clear lines between character and performance and my own space and life. So I cannot imagine what it's like to do that same thing with your safe space, but rather than a physical space, have that be the inside of your brain and your body. And I don't understand why somebody would want to do that to themselves, especially for an objectively worse performance. But also, like, no matter how good it makes your performance, you still should not be suffering like that for a job, because that is obviously not okay. So tying this all back to theater education, it is very common for professors in the arts world to subscribe to the ideas that the best art is made from trauma, glorifying pain and suffering in the name of being dedicated to the work. And it means that they inevitably glorify Strasberg's method, clouding their views of Stanislavski's original work and how they go about teaching it, and further perpetuating this trauma to new generations of actors. New, typically minority generations of actors, because our acting schools are so much more integrated now than they ever were. And it also emboldens white male actors to look up to these hyper-masculine, toxic men who are destroying themselves in the name of art, or what they call art, and taking that out on the rest of the people that they're studying with, making the rest of those people feel even more unsafe in the classroom as minority people. In my opinion, it should be regular practice to spend time in the acting classroom talking about psychology and how to safely act, how there's nothing glamorous about hurting yourself for a role, and how acting is a job, and we need to treat it like one. There's this idea that we're so grateful for a role and it's so rare to get work that we need to treat it like it's something sacred, and that we give our all to it, and that we need to be happy at that job every single day. And that's just not how people work. None of this is how people work. And honestly, we acknowledge that actors would also probably get better pay and people would respect their time and energy and whatnot. A human can dream. But anyway, that's it. That's all I have for you today. I thought it was gonna be such a strong deep dive into method acting, and what I realized is that I've covered all of the topics separately and I just needed to put them all together. So that's what I did. If you want to learn more about method acting with very specific examples, I did not include them here because I don't care. But if you want to learn about them, there's a really great video essay called The Problem of Method Acting. I highly recommend checking out. I've linked it in the description for you. Also, if you like this video, you're welcome to let me know with a like, comment, subscribe, whatever brings you joy, but no pressure. And I've linked a couple other of my videos kind of on this topic in the description for you as well. So yeah, as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for learning. Please take care of yourselves. Don't be a method actor. Remember to start over. I got confused. I got off my rhythm. Oh no, I have been taken off my rhythm. Street smarts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. Remember to start over, and I look forward to seeing you, my dear, in the next one.